Good morning, and welcome to the first day of the National Retail Federation's big show. Obviously, this is our worldwide retail reunion, so it's always great to see so many familiar faces. My name is Ravi Bagal. I'm the Worldwide General Manager for Retail and Consumer Products at AWS. And I wanted to share with you an interesting background story about my own life. I'm a second-generation retail technology guy. My dad was in the industry for 30 years, consulting and product management. And he had a customer called Kmart and another called Target, but he wouldn't go to Michigan or Minnesota. He'd go to Australia because these brands were so prolific in Australia. These brands are now part of Wesfarmers Group, one of the truly globally successful brands that you'll find. And we've been really honored to partner with Wesfarmers as they've done the move from traditional technology into modern architectures in the cloud. We're delighted to have Brad Blythe with us here today. Brad is the Chief Information Officer of Kmart Group, part of Wesfarmers, who's going to share with you the lessons learned as Wesfarmers has made the evolution to the cloud. So would you please welcome Brad Blythe.
Hello. Can everybody hear? I know there's a bit of background noise, so I'll try and speak up so it's a little bit louder. My name's Brad, and yes, I'm the Chief Information Officer for Kmart Group. Very excited, NRF Day 1, to be here. I was here last year. It was a great event. Got in late last night, and unfortunately my bags didn't make it, so I spent last night finding some clothes. I was running around Broadway in my gym gear, trying to find anywhere that would sell me some clothes at 9 p.m. last night. Luckily for me, things stay open quite late tonight, so that was good. You almost got me in my gym gear. And thank you to anybody who offered to help me as I was running through the street. You know, was I homeless? Did I need a place to stay? Some food? But I had to explain to them, Australians traditionally do underdress for the winter. We tend to walk around very unprepared for the cold, and we just kind of pretend like it's not there. Actually, that part's not true. Nobody did actually offer me any help on the streets. So it's New York. It's pretty tough out there. But thank you again for joining. I am going to talk to you about Kmart Group. And just for anybody, I know when I say Kmart, a lot of people in the room are probably thinking about the Kmart that they know here locally in the US. And if you're thinking about that, you're probably wondering what I'm doing on stage. Didn't Kmart close? Does this guy still have a job? What's going on? Has nobody told him? The Kmart that I'm referring to is Kmart Australia. And so Kmart Group actually operate 3 major brands: Kmart Australia New Zealand, Target Australia New Zealand, and a new brand which we're doing internationally called Anko. And Anko is a brand that we've created because we manufacture quite a lot of our merchandise. It's our own brand of product that we sell internationally. So that's Kmart Group. As Ravi mentioned, we exist as part of a division within a much bigger company called Wesfarmers. Wesfarmers own lots of other big companies. Bunnings in Australia, which is similar to a Lowe's, Officeworks, which is similar to a Staples, and another one called API or Priceline. And I'm not sure what that's similar to, but they do healthcare, pharmaceuticals. So hopefully that gives you an idea of how that company operates. And when I tell the story today, I'm going to talk primarily about Kmart, given that's the largest of the group. It's roughly about 80% of the total size of the group. It's by far the biggest brand, and it's a very loved brand within Australia. Is anybody ever shopped in a Kmart Australia? Hand up. A couple of people. A few up the front. Yes. So I've got a really quick video. We're going to see if it plays to give you an idea of the type of people or the sentiment in Australia around Kmart.
Okay, I'm just going in for the outdoor set. Okay, just the outdoor set. Here we go. Oh my god, that microwave. Oh, the cutlery. I need those fake plants. Oh my gosh, my crockery drawer will love these. I never knew I needed so many candles. Buy dog food here? Oh, amazing. Get that dog bed. That microwave will just suit our house down to the T.
Oh my god, we could get a toaster and a microwave and a sandwich press all for under $100 for the house.
Stop kicking the balls around! Jason, where's Chastity? Stop hiding in the clothes. Where's your brother?
$6.50. What a rip-off. Let's do a price check. Hopefully it's cheaper.
You can't have chewing gum, Chastity. With your brother.
Why do they put the lollies at the counter? Put that down. $19.50. Bull. Price check it. Price check it. $3.50. Bull. Price check it. Price check it. $7.50. Bull. Price check. Price check it. Price check it. Price check it. Bullshit. Price check it. $7.50. Price check it. $8.50. Bull. Price check it. I don't have a coin. We'll just get a trolley from here and then we'll go to Aldi. These clothes could be in Country Road, but they're only $4. $5 for a pair of jeans. I mean, there's got to be something wrong with them. Even if there is something wrong with them, we'll just come back and get another pair. So much better than...
So that was a quick video. Sorry, the volume wasn't the best there, but hopefully that gives you an idea. Essentially, it is an institution within Australia. 85% of Australians shop there. I think that number's probably a little bit low, if I'm completely honest. Basically, everybody I talk to, maybe I'm biased, and maybe they're talking to me because I've worked there, but pretty much everybody goes to Kmart on a semi-regular basis. And in this environment, which is very dynamic, and I know inflation's affecting a lot of people's discretionary spend, we're doing very well in this environment. Why are we doing so well in this environment? It's because we revolve around the last number, which is the 62% of shoppers associate Kmart with the lowest cost. We have a very strong ethos around good quality at the lowest cost. And that's kind of the secret sauce to the business model. Now, how do we achieve that? And I'll give you a quick explanation. Realistically, we've achieved lowest cost and quality through trying to own the whole end-to-end process. So like I said, over 80% of our product that we sell, we make under the Anko brand. We have a product design manufacturing team. They essentially go out and design and source product. We own our own supply chain distribution network. We are the biggest supply chain distribution network within Australia. We also have obviously digital retail, so our online presence, which we own, and our apps, and a physical retail store network. And to give you a bit of a stat, I think it's roughly about 85% of Australians live within 10 kilometres of a Kmart. So we try to keep and service customers as much as possible. And that's how the business model works. And that's been very successful for a long time, until about 3 years ago. So everybody in the room is obviously aware, and last time I was here last year, we were all talking about what's next off the back of COVID. So obviously COVID really disrupted the business. So every one of those sections that I talked about before, manufacturing was shut down. We found it really hard to impossible to get these products into the country. Once they were in the country, the supply chain distribution network didn't work as well. We couldn't move trucks between the states into the stores. At one point, 65% of our store network was closed down. We weren't an essential service, so we couldn't operate. Put a lot of pressure on our digital channels, but we fulfill through our stores. So even that was quite difficult, and tracking inventory was quite hard at the time. However, we're doing quite well at the moment, but what that did is it made us realise that we could observe companies that were outperforming us because they had very specific investment strategies around their technology, and they were outperforming in the conditions based on some of the investments that they'd already done. And so we were really lagging at this time, albeit we were trying to catch up. We just weren't moving fast enough. So I'm going to talk about some of the improvements that we made. Now, a lot of these improvements are off the back of the technology investment. Now, I won't refer to the technology stack absolutely directly, but I will talk about how it weaves in to the overall business change that we had to do. For those people who are undergoing a cloud migration, and that's something that we've already been through and continue to do, I'll give you 3 lessons learned really quick. And these are ones, I think I've done about 5 or 6 cloud migrations. I'm going to say 5, but it's probably 6. I'll give you 3 pointers in case you're going through one, things that I think are really valuable. Number 1, if you're going through a migration and you're looking at a cost-benefit analysis, do not put cost reductions in on your first year. You're not going to achieve them. Year 2, year 3, absolutely. Break even year 1 is impressive, but it's really, really hard, almost impossible to get cost reduction in your first year. You're going to have an engineer who rocks up, spins up an environment, and then goes on holiday for 2 weeks. And then you're going to get a nasty bill. You're going to oversize the environment, and it's going to rack up a bill. You might undersize it, and that causes something to break, and then you oversize it, and then it gets a bill. There's so many things that go into it, and you really need a year to roughly shake them out and figure out how to make it work. So that's number one. Number two, skills in market. It's probably the most underrated question or analysis I see people make when they're choosing a technology or a technology platform. Is there people out in the market how to operate this thing and actually have the skills developed to actually pick it up and use it? Out on the floor, if you're picking a cloud environment, any software out on the floor today that you go and have a look, have a think about it. If I implement that thing, can I actually go hire more than 10 people that can work it? Because if you can't, then you're going to have a problem once it's in. Even if the vendor's helping you and supporting you getting it in place, you're going to have to be able to get those skills. So you need to figure out, can you access them, and put that into your criteria when you select whatever it is that you're going through and selecting. The third one is focus on delivery certainty. So there's a lot of ways to get into cloud. There's lots of transformation you can do to maximize it, but really just try and get in and then figure out what cleanup work, what changes need to do. So really focus on number one, what's the most successful, least riskiest way to get into that environment. So they're my top three. Again, I'm going to focus on what this technology enabled our business to do and the business change that we put in place. And so on this slide, you can see some really good business metrics, but also some corresponding growth in the technology investment and the technology team to suit that. So when we were going through this and we decided that we had to invest more in technology, what did we need the technology team to be good at? These are the three things. We needed them to be good at execution. We needed them to figure out how to make things simple and easy to do, changes. We needed to figure out how they could make our business smarter. And we needed to make sure that they were returning value and we weren't just spending money, but we really understood it. So I'm going to go through these four things. But just as I go through them, the way I articulate them is what was the problem that we observed and what were we trying to solve? So within execution, we wanted to move quickly. COVID was happening. We had a lot of things. Some of these things we've been talking about doing for 5 years. And now was the time when we actually had the impetus to move. Some of the things that we wanted to do on top of that as well, that we knew we had to, that we could see other people doing, and some stuff we just wanted to try. What this meant was a lot of stuff that we tried to run in parallel. And at that time, we could only really do about 3 initiatives at the same time. And we needed to do much more. We needed to move quickly. Running things in parallel is the fastest way to improve your execution speed. You can do a lot of things to try and go faster, but trying to figure out how to run things in parallel, streams in parallel, is the number one way to go faster. The problem is when you try and do that, you can't just chuck people at it because stuff starts to break. You start to go overtime, under budget. You don't get all your scope out. Things break once they go in. So what did we do? So as I said, we could run 30 things. We're running 450 things in parallel at the moment. It's quite a significant improvement. We've got a lot more people, but not proportionate to that amount of improvement. What we did is we said, okay, we need these teams to just go off and execute and not be dependent on each other. We actually said we need to figure out how to break the dependencies, create an environment where they didn't need to talk to each other necessarily, where they had an objective and then they could move. And so we implemented something called the platform model. There's a lot of readings that you can do on this, but I'll tell you what it really meant to us. We decided that we would create teams around an outcome. So we were really clear around the outcomes that we wanted. If I go back to those 4 businesses, the product manufacturing, the supply chain, the digital retail, the physical retail, let's say, just for argument's sake, that we said that there was 4 teams and each team had a responsibility for each one of those areas. And the outcome is we wanted an improvement in one of those areas. So once we focused these teams on these outcomes, we created a measure which said, if you're doing a good job, this number should move. So we created an outcome and then a measure. We then assigned somebody we called a sponsor. That person is the person who knows the most about that particular area. And then we assigned another person, we call them the tech owner, and then they're responsible for what we call the completion rates. So the completion rates mean that when you say you're going to do something, you do it on time, on budget, per the schedule, like you said you would. So with those three things, we made sure that all the teams had the right technology ownership that they needed. But with this metric, outcome, sponsor, looking at the completion rates and the tech owner, all of a sudden teams could go and they were motivated to figure out, how do I move quickly, do the things that I'm supposed to do, and not create dependencies on other teams. There's something called Conway's Law. I don't know if anybody's familiar with it, but Conway's Law basically says your technology architecture is always going to match your organizational structure. This particular model helps you figure out how to make that not so dependent. In other words, according to Conway's Law, if you have an area of, let's say you have the channel team, the digital channel team and the physical retail team, they'll create their own technology stack and you'll never get synergies. But if you use the platform model properly, you essentially isolate those problems and they figure out how to build things in a way that means they don't have dependencies. The next one was around simplicity, and the way I'll articulate this is we had a lot of older technology still. We'd done all this transformation, but we were still slowed down because things were hard and complicated, and we still had to deal with older technology, or it was messy and we didn't clean it up properly the first time. So for us, this was really an investment problem. What we weren't doing is we weren't actually tackling the problem. Technology complexity is a little bit like a rash. It doesn't go away by itself. You need to go see somebody. So what we did is we changed the way that we thought about how we did investment. We basically made two buckets, and we said, bucket number one, the thing that needs to happen is to reduce the risk, and it's hygiene. And so if you go up and ask for money in bucket number one, you really need to figure out how you're showing that you're doing it in the least cost way, spending just enough to reduce the risk. The other bucket, which is something that should improve our business, this is what we call more return on investment. And basically what we say is you need to figure out how to not just change and invest the technology that you're doing, but also introduce one or two features that actually return something. Doesn't have to return a whole lot, doesn't have to pay back 2x, but it just has to be enough to prove the fact that you're doing something that is actually going to benefit further down the line. And now remember, teams are motivated to move their metric. So everything they do is kind of geared towards figuring out how to move that metric that I talked about before. So hopefully you can see how these two things start to come together. You've got teams that now have a really clear outcome, and then you've given them an investment strategy where when they go and ask for money, they're putting it into two buckets so you can really clearly see how much you're spending where, but yet you're still motivating teams to try and figure out how to improve their business area. The next bit is around intelligence, and this is probably something that a lot of people are trying to get to, which is, okay, you're spending money on technology, but are you actually making the business better? So for us, we defined our 4 business areas: digital channels, digital retail, physical retail, supply chain, product. Then what we had to do is figure out where were we spending money that was actually going to make these things work a little bit better. And we sat down firstly and we said, okay, what are the really core, when we're in these particular areas, what are the core data that really makes a difference to our business? Turns out there were only 4: product data, inventory data, sales data, and customer data. So we got really specific around what's the data that means the most for our business. We then said, all right, if we get incrementally better in one of those data sets, that will result in a better business outcome. So if we're smarter, even like 2%, 3% better at understanding inventory data, that makes a huge benefit for our business. So they're one of our really core pieces of investment. And then we looked on top of that and we said, okay, there's a whole bunch of new technologies out there specifically around being more intelligent with data. Where would we apply those? Because you could apply them in lots of different places. And that's what we were doing. We were figuring out use cases. When we stood back from that and said, actually, there's only 3 areas that make a really big difference to our business. Number one is understanding supply and demand. So if we're really good at understanding what we need to order, who wants it, where it needs to go, then that's a material business across all those 4 areas. operational task management. So if we understand, or if we actually get, which is our greatest asset, our people that work in our organisation, if we make sure that they're doing the right thing at the right time, we'll be much better as a business than we were before. And then customer engagement, which I know is one that everybody kind of works on. So understanding what customers want and are we actually servicing them correctly. So once we had those clear definitions, what we did is we made sure we had platform teams around those, and we made sure that the majority of the investment was going into those ROI, those bigger investments, rather than just some of the more cost-efficient, cost-effective remedial work. So that, again, fitted really well into our model. And then the last one was value. So after we put all this together, we had to prove it. So this was about really clear metrics. So when we went back and we had a look at those business areas, we defined some really, like I said, those key measures, those key metrics. We had to make sure that they were right. Originally, we had about 45 measures. Now we have 5 that people talk about all the time. Number 1, in the digital business, it's about comp sales. So that team is really motivated to grow sales year on year versus last year. In our physical retail store, it's REM as a percentage of sales. So basically really optimizing the REM that they spend within their stores. In the supply chain, it's supply chain cost as a percentage of REM, as percentage of cost, sorry. So supply chain cost as a percentage of revenue. And then in the product area, it's merch net income. The overall technology team, anybody who doesn't work in that, just looks at cost of doing business as a percentage of revenue. So those metrics, and they're just the ones that we use, but hopefully that gives you an example, is you can actually get really clear on your metrics. You can pass them through to the team. The problem will be if some of those don't necessarily correlate to the work that the team are doing, and this is where sometimes you need to figure out how to have other operational indicators that you're doing the right thing. So for an example, if you have a team that's trying to increase comp sales, but sales are down, not for anything that they're doing, you need just an indicator to actually tell you whether the work that they're doing actually move the needle positively or negatively. And an example could be that we use in our mobile team. We use mobile active users as a secondary measure, which helps us understand whether they're growing comp sales or not. So there's some low-level details, but hopefully you get the idea, which is simplify your metrics. You have teams that are anchored around these problems, that are aligned to these metrics. You figure out how you get your investment working, and then essentially you can measure the value. Underpinned was all that technology investment that I said before. So what did the cloud really help us do? It helped us actually enable this. In other words, it gave the team more autonomy. Once we had all the other stuff and they had the autonomy, we could scale it. So the lessons learned along the way, the thing that really made this work, number 1 was the partnerships. Like I said, I've not talked about anything today that the technology teams could do on their own. They actually had to have a really clear partnership model, and we created one as an organisation around that. Guidelines over direction. This whole thing was a framework. So we gave teams autonomy and we gave them some principles like metrics and ways of doing things, but the whole idea was to get teams to be really self-sufficient. And then we looked at outcomes over metrics. So we actually said these are the major outcomes that we want, and that's what we prioritised. So they were the lessons. I'll probably just have a really quick one, and Ravi, maybe we have a chat around this afterwards. But what's next for us? We've got really good metrics that we can achieve, so that's great. The question is, can we create ones that are unachievable that still motivate the team? So rather than giving a team a number that they could hit, how do we give them something that's actually really hard for them to hit? And rather than them just hit the number, exceed what they would have otherwise. So it's a really complicated thing to get right, especially when you're recognising teams. But we're calling it stretch goals, and I know some companies are doing it well. We're not doing it well just yet, and we're trying to figure it out. Flow metrics is something that we're looking at next. This is about where in the processes doesn't it work? Where have we created more friction? It's another concept that I know some organisations are trying to work with. We're early days with that, and so that should help us figure out how our system's working overall and where a team's getting that autonomy and where are they not. And then the last one is kind of crowdsourcing. So we have a huge amount of customers that shop with us, How do we get the ideas out of them, as well as their own ideas around what should work and what we should be working on, and feed that into the system? So that was really quick, and there's a lot of information, but that's all I had today. Ravi, did you want to come up for a second?
Yeah, just for a moment or two, why don't we chat? So first of all, thank you so much for that, Brad. I wanted to ask you a little bit about the platform. Yeah, you went from being able to do a small number of initiatives to massively increasing the number of initiatives that your team could execute. Can you talk to us a little bit about how things like cloud and modern technology enabled you to do that?
Yeah, so when we set up the environment, we did it in a way so that teams were fully responsible for what they built. So we gave them, rather than give them environments, we gave them accounts and said, you figure out what you need. So we really geared the whole technology strategy around, we'll provide you a bunch of tools, but you figure it out. Now that resulted in some duplication, but we weren't afraid of that as long as we were getting the return. So as long as the metrics of, are we actually getting the return on this investment added up, we were okay duplicating a few things here and there, because ultimately we were satisfied that we were getting what we wanted faster.
Yeah, and I suppose if it's not working, you can just kill it, right? That's the nice thing. The fungibility is you can spin it up, and if it's not working, just make it go away, right? Your observations about simplicity really resonated with me. Can you talk to us a little bit about how, modern architectures and cloud technology allow you to really radically simplify the entire business processes?
I think what that technology really did for us is it gave us observability, so we could see where things were or weren't working. We did quite a significant mainframe move. Now, we still have COBOL, we still have mainframe apps, but we took a piece of the risk out, and that was what I was talking about, that minimal cost approach in the investment strategy. What we did is we said mainframe's a risk for us on a number of different fronts. But if we move the whole thing into cloud, that at least eliminates the hardware risks, which brings us back into a place that we're comfortable with, but also minimizes the investment in getting the risk there and leaves the team capacity to work on the stuff that has a higher ROI, that hits their number.
I think that seems like such an important message, that like the cost of experimentation in our industry has been so high because you maintain massive legacy systems, but with things like cloud, you can actually experiment and not be afraid to fail. Yeah, which is great. One last question. As you think about the future and the couple of things that you're looking for, what are the sort of technology priorities that would support those big ideas like the crowdsourcing? What are you looking to maybe implement that's the next new thing?
Yeah, so and I'm sure everybody in the room is really interested. When I was here last year, for anybody who was here, the Gen AI bomb just kind of dropped when we were here. And what was really interesting is kind of felt like we were talking about the wrong stuff because this hot topic had come up, but nobody was really prepared for it. It's definitely something on our mind, but I'll go back to those key business areas I talked about before. We know where our key data sets are, and then we know where we need to be smarter. Mm-hmm. So what we're really looking for is out of those three areas, supply and demand, operational task management, customer engagement, that's where we want to be high on that curve. We want to take a few more chances than we otherwise would. The other stuff's important, absolutely. Right. But those are the three areas where if we have to prioritize, we have to choose, it's going to be in one of those three. So that framework really helps us understand what to go after.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experiences. And I think it was really notable that it was so business focused and a refreshing way of looking at it rather than leading with technology, leading with the business imperatives. So I think that was really useful for our audience. And for you, thank you very much for sitting through what was a sometimes challenging session, but I hope that you found it useful as well. Have a great rest of the show.